local here. Her company name Center, and she is a cybersecurity program manager. Please give her a hand of applause.
One more back to go.
Okay. Did everybody hear me okay? No? Yes? There we go. How about that? All right. We're all set. We're ready to go. Yes. Great to be here. So excited to see such a turnout. And yes, just a presentation a moment ago. We heard a little bit about Super Cyber Man. What do you think about Super Cyber Women out there too? There it is some more of them. So that's a good thing. Just a little bit about myself. I'm CISSD. You heard a little bit about that. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's really, really worth it. I'll also echo some of the discussion about certifications that you heard from the speaker from African State a little bit earlier. As an employer, yes, certifications are one of the big things that we're looking for when you're walking in the door into your cybersecurity job, be it your first job, your mid-level, or even more senior position. But it's not just having a certification. It is, again, the echo what Ben and others said, being able to think critically about the problems faced in your career. So it's an exciting career, and I'm talking a little bit about the things you can do in cybersecurity today. Definitely not one size fits all. We want to go through some sort of big picture kinds of thoughts with cybersecurity. We've heard a whole lot about it. There's some thoughts about where things are going in the future. There we go. There's some projections on where things are going in the future. As comments have already been made, the problem space is not getting better. It's getting more and more challenging. That's definitely continuing. Tremendous amount of opportunities and diversity in the cybersecurity workspace. We're going to talk a little bit about that and where you might fit in, where this might be a good career for you. So, we're going to jump in a little bit. What's the fuss? What's the big deal? All right, how long goes by that you don't hear something about a significant cybersecurity breach, some sort of an attack in the news? Weeks? Does weeks go by? No, I mean, it's almost every day. One interesting thing popped up with the Olympics in Sochi. Did anyone hear the story about the experiment that the NBC correspondent ran? On just how long does it take to have your personal information compromised as a tourist, as a family member, as someone who's going into Sochi to see the games? Well, they brought in brand new laptops, brand new tablets, walked into a coffee shop, and sure enough, before their coffee arrived at their table, they had been compromised. Personal information, an important new currency in cybercrime. Why has this become such a big problem? This is a chart that I like to show because I think it has a lot of illustrative value. So this is a chart that basically steps through about the last 30 years and what's been happening in the cyber attack space. So let's look back to 1980, where the red line that goes up is really the increasing complexity of the cyber attacks that we're seeing. So what happened back 30 years ago? Well, attacks consisted of what we consider today pretty simple stuff. A lot of password cracking, development of self-replicating code. We said viruses were so yesterday. But when viruses first came about, they were a big deal. Moving on down the line, what was happening 10, 12 years ago. Well, as we started moving into the 2000s, that's where we really began to see the development of botnets and automated attacks, things that really began the currency and the ability to move large, massive attack scales that compromise lots and lots of people. What's happening today? Well, we're hearing about it all the time. Increasing complexity, we're hearing about more and more supply chain attacks, we're hearing more about attacks on the critical infrastructure. I think you're going to hear a little bit more about that later. Well, as this complexity of attack has been going up over these last 30 years, what's been happening with just how, just what the cost was, how difficult it was for somebody to mount one of these attacks. That's in the blue line. Well, we see that correspondingly going down, down, down. So when you look at this picture of where we are today, you've got a huge asymmetry between what it takes to attack versus what it really takes to defend. So where's the advantage to that? What does this chart tell us? Anybody? Good guys, bad guys. Who's got the upper hand? Bad guys. Bad guys in the States. So that's the landscape. That's the world we're living in today. So just how big of a problem is it? Well, there was a little study done, a little study conducted by the Center for Strategic and International Studies just about 6 months ago that really trying to look at the overall dollar value of what is this on a global scale? Just how much how much of an impact is really being revealed through cybercrime and espionage. Look at this number here. Somewhere between $300 billion and $1 trillion.
Good job.
Okay, a billion has 9 zeros behind it. A trillion has 12 zeros behind it. This is a big, big deal. And continuing to grow. Continuing to grow over time. That's the projection. There's also another perspective, and that is it's not just the dollars. It's just not about our credit cards being breached, the target attack, and the things that we often hear about in the media. There's also the side of this that speaks to national security and just what is the impact to our infrastructure. I've got a little short video that sort of speaks to the heart of that that I'd like to cue up on a little piece CNN ran probably about a year ago now on the threat space.
From the nation's power grid to online banking, the U.S. economy is utterly reliant on the internet. The Pentagon is now watching the cyber threat to the economy every minute.
We've seen the attacks on Wall Street over the last 6 months grow significantly. Over 140 of those attacks over the last 6 months.
In the face of growing cyber attacks, many from China, President Obama recently signed an executive order to improve cybersecurity.
We cannot look back years from now and wonder why we did nothing in the face of real threats to our security and our economy.
A recent investigation even pinpointed this building in China that houses part of a shadowy Chinese military unit responsible for thousands of hacks into American business and government agencies.
China's massive campaign to steal technology, business practices, intellectual property, and business strategies through cyberspace continues, and it continues relentlessly.
For the first time, the President's National Security Advisor saying cyber attacks are now the #1 U.S. issue with the Chinese government.
Beijing should take serious steps to investigate and put a stop to these activities.
The administration's new strategy to deal with it all, overcome privacy issues, and share more information about attacks between government and business.
Think of this as going up to New York City on the New Jersey Turnpike. The Easy Pass would see a car going by. What we're telling the internet service providers, if you see a red car, tell us that you saw the red car, where you saw it, and where it's going.
Okay, so you see from a national perspective, and probably not the first time you've seen the extent of the problem and the challenges that we're all facing here. Okay. Looking a little bit further ahead in terms of where things are going, as for those of you who are just considering cybersecurity as a career and looking at the next 5 years of actually getting into this space, some of the big trends that are driving issues today is the explosion in the use of our smartphones and the evolving Internet of Things. Okay, we've all got these smartphones that contain all of our personal information, and they're so darn convenient, right? Everybody uses these. Well, there's a little trick I want to share with you about smartphones and banking, mobile banking. There's one way to be secure in using your smartphone for mobile banking. Don't do it. And it's as convenient as it is just really, really not worth it. Extremely difficult to secure. Internet of Things. Who knows what I'm talking about when I say Internet of Things? Yeah. Okay. So, sorry? Internet of Things. Internet of Things is everything in our lives being connected to basically everything else. Saw an interesting commercial, I think, just over the last week that shows a nice middle-aged couple sitting out on vacation somewhere, and the guy's using his smartphone to control the security settings in his house. Boy, would that make you feel secure to do that? Maybe time to rethink that. But as our culture moves increasingly towards the devices that we use being connected to everything else, so we're talking about our refrigerators, we're talking about our cars, we're talking about our home security systems, we're talking about our banking accounts, we're talking about our power settings and our thermostat, on and on and on, okay? Here is the space that we're working at, and for everyone trying to figure out how to secure that, there's probably about 10 more folks trying to figure out ways to get around that security. So the left box here really just talks about, okay, how is this problem space evolving and where is this threat evolving? It's moving to the Internet of Things. It's moving into the mobile device space. Well, the right box really talks about, okay, where's the discipline of cybersecurity starting to move? Ben brought up before the little definition of cybersecurity, which he says is sort of like putting things in a box. Secure your systems, secure your networks. Well, that's been the traditional thinking. That's been the way things have been done in the past. A comment or an adage, rather, that those of us in the industry like to use with security is that you've got to build it in. You've got to bake it in to engineering and technological processes from the beginning. You can't just bolt it on or spread it over the top when you're done. That's old thinking. It still covers a good amount of the watershed, but some of the new emerging ways of looking at cybersecurity is much more akin to the way our own immune systems work in the human body. And that is, we're not really protecting viruses and bacteria from getting in. We know that our bodies are fighting all kinds of viruses and bacterial infections all the time. And since hopefully, most of us are pretty healthy most of the time, it works. So this paradigm really extends to the cybersecurity space as well. And don't worry so much about blocking the bad stuff coming in. Let's figure out how to build that resilient and robust immune system within our network devices so that we are not as vulnerable to these attacks when they occur. So this is all being enabled by big data, by cloud computing infrastructures, and folks who understand this, folks who can think critically about this problem space have tremendous opportunity in the future. Okay, working across the cybersecurity lifecycle. What does this really mean for those of you who are pre-career considering cybersecurity as a place where you might like to work? This area is not a one-size-fits-all. It's not like, hey, there's a job out there in cybersecurity, and you've heard a lot about folks who are pen testers and get to go out and hack. And that's just one small slice of the opportunities and the needs that are prevalent in the cybersecurity workspace. The little diagram in the bottom left-hand side is what we call the engineering V. And, being in Huntsville, I would be remiss if I didn't show you at least one diagram from the engineering discipline, right? But basically, what this shows is a technology life cycle that steps through on the top left part of the V. The fact that you begin a project, you begin an engineering or technology development effort with the concept of operations, you then figure out what the architecture and the requirements are, you move into your detailed design, you implement it, you test it, you validate it, and then you ultimately field it. Well, I call out all of those different processes because there are cybersecurity jobs inherent in every one of those. So those are all discrete disciplines, contributions that you can make in this workspace. We're all different. We all like to do different things. Some of us like to really sort of dive in and solve mysteries and puzzles. Some of us like to work alone and be that individual contributor who's going to dive deep and figure out something that's really, really hard. If that's what you want to do, then perhaps you're going to be attracted to, and I'll go up to the left-hand circle of really cybersecurity activities and say, well, if that's what you're interested in, if you want to be that person who is the deep dive analyst, you're probably going to be real interested in designing some of the architecture. You're going to be interested in career challenges that's going to let you find that hidden rack that you heard about earlier. Because guess what? It doesn't leave much of a footprint. But if you know what normal looks like, right, then you can figure out what not normal looks like. Maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe you're not someone who likes to work alone. Maybe you're somebody who really enjoys that teamwork and camaraderie that you get when you're working with a group of other people. That's fine. There's plenty of opportunity for you also in the cybersecurity workspace. If you want to work with a small team of people or a large team of people to solve a common problem, perhaps what you would be interested in is the overall management aspects of cybersecurity, designing architectures, policies, and processes that are in place for organizations, both large and small. Maybe you're someone who likes to look at the big picture and say, well, this works pretty well, but there's a better way to do it. If you're that kind of a person, again, the management, the assessment, cybersecurity processes might be a career field that you'll find interesting. One common denominator in all of this, and I think it probably applies to most of us, when we get up in the morning and go to work, and then when we come home, you want to feel like what you've done has actually made a difference. And regardless of where you're working in the cybersecurity workplace, that is going to be your sense and your feeling at the end of every day, hopefully. Some days better than others, obviously. So this is just a short list of some of the very cool careers that are in cybersecurity. This is put out by an organization called SANS, which is one of the most respected entities in the discipline. And these opportunities are those jobs that are expected to be very viable opportunities 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. Excellent areas for you to move into. I've got another little video here that's a little bit of a different look at the anatomy of the cyber crime. And maybe we'll take a look at that one now.
Institutions go to great lengths to protect themselves against cyber attacks.
But as in Live Free or Die Hard, very little stops the elite hackers from penetrating the most sophisticated technology.
The hacker underground has developed various weapons in cyberspace that allow them to bypass encryption and thus get into these systems and steal your funds. And the average losses associated with a cyber heist is 1.3 million. An average bank robbery in the physical world, where you have a gun or a weapon, is only $6,000 to $8,000.
This is a criminal industry with staggering rewards. In 2005, a Miami-based hacker made crime history by pulling off one of the biggest online bank heists of all time. But he's far less known than the likes of Bonnie and Clyde or Billy the Kid. Hacker Alberto Gonzalez would drive through Miami shopping districts, hacking into stores' wireless networks. He wasn't stealing their money. He was fishing for credit card numbers. And he'd struck the motherlode.
He broke into a retailer through one of their stores and got back to the corporate headquarters, where there was a lot of credit card information all stored in one database in one place.
Once Gonzalez had hacked his way into the corporate head office, he would download tens of thousands of customers' credit card details. Gonzalez then sold the stolen credit card details onto Eastern European cyber criminals. In his first year, Gonzalez stole an incredible 11.2 million payment cards from retailers across Miami. 12 months later, this had increased to almost 90 million.
That was hitting very, very large retail chains that have thousands of stores and millions of customers, obviously. So he went after really big targets, and he was successful.
Gonzalez got greedy. He decided that it had worked, that he didn't think he had left any tracks. And well, technically, one agent versus one hacker, you're kind of same level. The hacker's probably going to be able to outwit him on anything online. But you bring money into it, and the amount of systems, the amount of agencies, the amount of people who are now focused on you is a problem.
In July 2007, the year Live Free or Die Hard was released, Gonzalez was arrested when an undercover detective followed him into a bank. Pretending to use one of the machines, the detective watched as Gonzalez pulled out a number of debit cards and withdrew tens of thousands of dollars in cash. Following months of interrogation, authorities also found he had access to over 43 million stolen credit card numbers. Gonzalez was jailed for 20 years. But why didn't this incredible cyber heist make the headlines?
You don't hear about the bank robberies that occur in cyberspace because of the reality of the reputational risk that would impact the financial institution as a whole. Law enforcement, both Europol, the FBI, Secret Service in the U.S., collaborate heavily with the financial institutions to go after cyber criminals.
Okay, so we saw this video about cybercrime. The earlier video was about the national security impact. Interesting tie-in here between the two. You saw some discussion in the first video about an executive order being put out for our critical infrastructure. And a lot of people don't really appreciate the fact that currently there are no regulations or laws that require our critical infrastructure, and certainly not our retail organizations, to adhere to any sort of prescribed cybersecurity standards. So you're just trusting them to preserve and safeguard your data with what they think is the best way to do it. So interesting world we live in. Moving on. I know you've heard from Athens State. They talked a little bit about some of their efforts in certification. Of course, I've heard from UAH earlier this morning, in addition to Calhoun. But I wanted to share a little bit of information with you about UAB right down the road, because I'm having to work with them and partner with them on a number of cybersecurity kinds of activities. And this is really out of their Center for Information Assurance and Joint Forensics Research. They've got a number of programs, and those are really highlighted along the bottom. They partner with large organizations such as the FBI, Microsoft, Microsoft, Facebook. In fact, Facebook basically finished out the third floor of one of their buildings because of the support that UAD was able to give them in a malware exploit. So you've got some top-notch opportunities for undergraduate and graduate level education right here in Alabama. I can tell you that the young folks coming out of UAD's programs are getting jobs immediately. And I think that probably goes as well for other programs as well. Also, we wanted to just share, of course, right here in Huntsville, we have UAH through their business school with information systems and specializations in information assurance and such. So lots of opportunities to learn more, to get involved, to earn your certifications, and then really to find your niche in the cybersecurity space wherever you think that might fit. So that's it from me. Any questions?
What is the certifications and qualifications that people can have?
Probably not instantly. Probably a certification is sort of your necessary but not sufficient. So your certification is going to be, your past. That yes, you're qualified. You've got a baseline level of knowledge and understanding to move into the job. So it is, the certification in and of itself is not a guarantee, but certainly a prerequisite, in my opinion. Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you.